The world didn't end on September 26, 1983. Not officially, not in the papers, not even in the quiet conversations people had over breakfast the next morning. But it came closer than it ever had before or since, and almost nobody noticed. Picture this. It's the middle of the night in a concrete bunker just outside Moscow, the kind of place they built to survive the end of everything. Thick walls, dim red lights, the low hum of machines that never sleep. The Cold War isn't some history lesson yet. It's right there, breathing down everyone's neck. Ronald Reagan is calling the Soviet Union the evil empire. The Soviets have just shot down a Korean airliner full of innocent people, convinced it was a spy plane. Missiles are being rolled into Europe that can hit Moscow in under 10 minutes. Everyone's jumpy. Everyone's waiting for the other shoe to drop. And in that bunker sits a man named Stanislav Petrov, 44 years old, lieutenant colonel, not some hotshot general with medals dripping off him, just a guy who helped design the software for the Soviet early warning system. He's on the night shift at Serpukhov 15, staring at a wall of screens that are supposed to tell the Kremlin if the Americans have finally pushed the button. The system is called Oko, Russian for eye. Brand new, supposed to be foolproof. Satellites in weird orbits watching the American Midwest for the flash of missile launches. Petrov's job is simple on paper. Watch the screens, trust the data, call it in if the worst happens. Because if the worst happens, there's no time to double check. You launch back before their missiles land. That's the rule. Hair trigger, no room for doubt. The clock says just after midnight. Petrov sipping tea, probably thinking about his wife and kids back home, maybe wondering if this shift will ever end. Then the siren starts. Not a gentle beep, a full-throated howl that cuts through the bunker like a knife. The big screen in front of him lights up red. One word, launch. Then another line appears. One intercontinental ballistic missile, coming from the United States, headed straight for the Soviet Union. Petrov freezes for a second, just a second. His brain is racing. One missile? That doesn't make sense. If the Americans were really going to start the end of the world, they wouldn't send one lonely rocket. They'd send everything. Hundreds, thousands, enough to knock out every Soviet silo before the counterstrike could even get off the ground. That's how you win a nuclear war, if you can call it winning. One missile? That's either a mistake or the beginning of something much worse. He checks the readout again. The system says it's real. The satellites are tracking it. Speed, trajectory, altitude, all the numbers line up. Then the screen updates. Now it's 5 missiles. 5! Still not hundreds, but 5 is enough to start a war. The siren is still screaming. His colleagues are looking at him, waiting. The room feels smaller, the air thicker. Petrov later said it felt like he was sitting on a hot frying pan. All he had to do was pick up the phone, one call up the chain, and the whole machine would start turning. Soviet leaders, sick old Yuri Andropov in his hospital bed would get the news. Retaliation protocols would kick in. Bombers would scramble. Submarines would surface. Missiles would fly the other way. And within 30 minutes, maybe less, the world as we know it would be over. But Petrov didn't pick up the phone. He sat there staring at that red screen, and something in his gut just said no. The system was new. They tested it, sure, but everyone knew it had glitches, false positives before, and radar on the ground couldn't see over the horizon yet. There was no second confirmation, no explosions lighting up the sky, no reports from anywhere else, just this one machine screaming that 5 American missiles were on their way. He thought about it for what felt like forever, but was probably only a minute. Then he made the call, not the one everyone expected. He called his commander and said, "It's a malfunction, false alarm." He didn't scream it. He just said it like a man who'd made up his mind and was willing to bet the planet on it. 23 minutes passed. That's how long it would have taken for those missiles to hit if they were real. 23 minutes of the longest silence in human history. Petrov waited. Everyone in that bunker waited. The siren eventually stopped. The screen went quiet. No impacts, no mushroom clouds, nothing. Just the low hum of the machines again, like the whole thing had never happened. It turned out the satellites had been fooled by something no one had predicted. High-altitude clouds catching the sunrise just right. The reflection looked exactly like the heat signature of missile launches. A glitch in the code, a trick of the light. The world almost ended because the sun hit a cloud at the wrong angle. But here's the part that still gives me chills. Nobody outside that bunker knew it. Not the American president, not the newspapers, not your parents or mine. The Soviets buried it. They investigated Petrov, sure. They grilled him for days, asked him why he didn't follow protocol to the letter. In the end, they reprimanded him, not for almost starting World War III, but for not filling out the logbook properly. Can you believe that? Paperwork. The man who may have saved every living soul on Earth got a slap on the wrist for bad handwriting in the official diary. They moved him to a less sensitive post. He had a nervous breakdown a little while later, couldn't sleep, kept replaying those 23 minutes. The Soviet Union collapsed a few years after that, and the story finally leaked out in the 90s. A retired general named Yuri Votintsev spilled it in his memoirs. Suddenly, Petrov was the man who saved the world. Western journalists tracked him down in a little apartment outside Moscow. He was living on a tiny pension, chain-smoking cheap cigarettes, still refusing to call himself a hero. He'd say, "I was just doing my job. My colleagues were soldiers. They followed orders. I had a civilian education. Maybe that's why I questioned it." He told one interviewer he figured the odds were 50-50. He was never 100% sure. He just knew that if he was wrong, nobody would be around to blame him anyway. Think about that for a second. One man, one decision, in a system built to remove human error, a human being stepped in and said, wait. If he'd done what the machines and the rules told him, the chain reaction would have been unstoppable. Soviet missiles in the air within minutes. American satellites would have picked it up instantly. Their own hair-trigger systems would have responded. Cities gone in fireballs. Tens of millions dead in the first hour. Then the nuclear winter. Smoke blocking the sun for years. Crops failing. Billions starving. The kind of end that doesn't leave survivors to write the history books. And the crazy thing, this wasn't the first time. It probably won't be the last. There were other close calls. False alarms in the American system, too. A training tape accidentally loaded into NORAD in 1979. Another one during the Cuban Missile Crisis, where a single Soviet submarine almost launched because they thought they were being attacked. But September 26, 1983 feels different because it happened in the dark, in secret, while the rest of us were sleeping or worrying about the price of bread or arguing about sports on the radio. The world almost ended, and the morning newspapers still ran stories about the weather and celebrity gossip. Petrov died in 2017, quietly, in that same small town. He never got rich off the story, never wrote a best-selling book. There's a memorial stone for him in Warsaw now, a little plaque that says he did something extraordinary. But most people still don't know his name. They walk past it on their way to coffee. I think about him sometimes when I hear the news today. The missiles are still on alert. The computers are smarter now, but they're still run by fallible humans. The tensions have different names, new countries, new weapons, new reasons to be afraid. But the button is still there. One person away from everything. One tired officer staring at a screen at 12:30 in the morning, deciding to trust the machine or his own imperfect heart. The day the world almost ended didn't come with explosions or sirens you could hear on the street. It came with a man who simply refused to panic, who looked at the data and said, "Not today." And because he did, you and I are still here, drinking coffee, arguing about nothing important, watching sunsets that almost never happened. We owe him more than we'll ever know. And the strangest part is most of us never even got the chance to say thank you. The world kept turning that night, quietly, like nothing had happened. But something had. something that reminds us how thin the line is between the life we know and the darkness we don't. And maybe, just maybe, that's the scariest story of all, because that means tomorrow could be the same kind of day, and we probably won't notice that one either, until it's too late.